there's time for maximum impact.
من حلفك مع الصليبيين.
On September the 11th, enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country.
Along with our coalition partners, we are hammering these terrorists, taking out their fighters, their commanders, hundreds of vehicles and tanks, nearly 200 oil and gas facilities, the infrastructure that funds their terror, more than 1,000 fighting positions, checkpoints, buildings, barracks. We're taking them out. That's because of the work that you do. And supply lines and making it harder for them to maneuver. In Iraq, local forces have held the line in some places and pushed back ISIL in other places. In Syria, our airstrikes are inflicting heavy losses on ISIL fighters and leaders. Because of you, we have blunted their momentum and we have put them on the defensive. And these terrorists are learning the same thing that the leaders of Al-Qaeda have learned the hard way. They may think that they can chalk up some quick victories, but our reach is long. We do not give up. You threaten America, you will have no safe haven. We will find you, and like petty tyrants and terrorists before you, the world is going to leave you behind and keep moving on without you.
I mean, he basically, it's like, you know, he opened the front door and just started shooting.
Absolutely, and that's where I was headed. If we get into a circumstance where the forces are very intermingled, then the target discrimination becomes more difficult. But I will say, this isn't a light switch. Either you do it or you don't. There are technologies available that we didn't have 5 years ago that allow us to actually apply force and to see the situation on the ground in ways we couldn't before. But I'm not walking away from what I said. If we get to the point where I think we need the JTAC with the Iraqi security forces,
What branch of the armed forces did you serve in?
I served in the Marine Corps Reserves, and I'm currently serving in the Coast Guard Reserves.
Were you ever deployed on the front?
Technically, yes.
What benefits did you receive because of being part of the reserve?
There's obviously pay and compensation for it, and access to the GI Bill, college education, health insurance, and then the benefit of serving my country.
And do you support what this country is doing to protect itself?
What do you mean?
Like the war on terror, surveillance, the NSA programs?
Yes.
I am broadly satisfied with what's happened in the last year. We have seen an extraordinary change in public opinion, in public awareness. We have seen an increased openness, and I would say innovative spirit in government, not by choice, but by necessity. I believe we had Bob Litt speaking earlier, which was great to have him with us. And he mentioned that, they've decided they're going to be a little more transparent in the future because they recognize that these policies of overclassification, over secrecy, are not helpful, and in fact, they're damaging. And I think we should really scrutinize, the value not just of the government's shall we say, improvement. And not just the encouraging rulings that we're seeing around the world in court systems. A number of panelists have spoken about beneficial things we're seeing in the United States court system. The first federal court system, or the first open federal court to review the programs, found that they're likely unconstitutional, even called them Orwellian in scope. The European Court of Justice struck down the European version of Smith v. Maryland. Said the data retention directive, is unallowable. It's a fundamental violation of rights. We've seen the United Nations issue reports that said mass surveillance is not permissible under any circumstances. It's necessarily, or it's a contradiction of sort of our fundamental values, and it's an inherent violation of rights. And we see a lot of things like that happening. But beyond that, we see the real change that's happening is actually occurring outside of courts, outside of Congress, outside of the executive agencies entirely. And this is happening through things like technology companies.